think he's racist.
And the scum that is this assassin Breitbart.
I said I love you!
This is a pivotal moment in American history, and it's a very sexy time. I'm going to get back to irony.
I guess I'll start. I'm Alexander Marlowe. I'm the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, and I'm happy to introduce myself and I guess we're going to have a panel today honoring the legacy of the man who is the conservative new media pioneer. But Andrew Breitbart is a guy. Thank you. Andrew Breitbart's a guy who really led a double life. He was this conservative new media giant, a guy who will be on the Mount Rushmore of internet pioneers, if there ever is one. I don't believe there is. It'd have to be digital. That'd be very tough to pull off. And he was also a husky male model. The joke there that Andrew used to make frequently is really that he had two gears. And the gears were, one was righteous indignation. And that's the title of his book, his memoir, which kind of breaks down his playbook for life and for media, and jocularity. And you see both of those in the clip there of Hating Breitbart, the documentary about Andrew. And I was the first employee of Breitbart News. I met Andrew at a convention very similar to this one, at a small reception where Andrew explained that the culture is actually upstream from politics, that it wasn't really that the political figures were responding, it wasn't really that the culture was responding to politics, it was that the political figures were actually taking their cues from executives in Hollywood, and that the next president was going to, and at the time Barack Obama was going to run a made-for-TV campaign. And this is an amazing thing because you might notice that the current president may have used a very similar playbook with a made-for-TV campaign. Now it's one of these things where that's all we talk about. It's a ubiquitous idea, but it really started 10 years ago in the basement of Andrew Breitbart's home office in West Los Angeles, not in Washington, not in the Beltway, not in Manhattan with the elite media. And this is where Andrew got his ideas because he grew up as this liberal driving around West Los Angeles. And while he was there, he was trying to break into either the entertainment industry. He was a journalist in music. He went to Tulane University, where he thought of himself as a liberal and also a party animal, knowing he would rarely show up for class and had to beg his math teacher to give him a C- just so he could graduate. And I think the story is when he flew home, he didn't have any luggage, so he put everything in a plastic trash bag, and so that was swinging around the carousel at LAX when he got home. And he set as his goal for his first year out of college, he wants to wake up before noon. That was his goal for the first year. How that guy could become the warrior for the right in terms of the culture, the tip of the spear for the culture war, is an amazing journey. And it started with talk radio. It started with him listening to Rush Limbaugh, to Dennis Prager, folks you might hear from this week, some of the legends of the movement, and learning that these ideas are wonderful ideas. These are ideas that are valid. They have a place in American life, and they're not to be frowned upon. They're to be taken dead seriously. And the next component of this, which is, I think, very relevant this year, a lot of you guys may have witnessed the Brett Kavanaugh witch hunt. Andrew Breitbart witnessed the same thing with Clarence Thomas, where he tuned in as a media as someone who had a curiosity with media, looking for Joe Biden and Ted Kennedy to take out Clarence Thomas, who is clearly a predator. But what he saw was the same thing. He saw the high-tech lynching. He saw people trying to destroy a man simply because he had right-of-center values. And the Clarence Thomas witch hunt, in a way, created Andrew Breitbart, which is pretty remarkable, because I'm sure a lot of you guys, your opinions probably hardened watching the attempted destruction of Brett Kavanaugh this year. So Andrew's playbook, as he goes through in his book, Righteous Indignation, is pretty simple. You have two modes. It is not that, and this is a quote from the book that I love so much, it's not that you want to fight, it's that you are compelled to fight. It is a fight that you were drawn to. It's something that he was in his bones. He needed to defend the American people. He wanted to defend the individuals who were called racist for no reason, without any basis whatsoever. He fought against blacklists. He fought for freedom of speech, and he fought for traditional American values. That's all stuff you're going to hear a lot this week, and for good reason. But Andrew's secret weapon was what you saw a little bit in that video. is his jocularity. That's the other mode. Righteous indignation, jocularity. He was the original guy who had fun. He was the guy who, when he went to the bar, he would shut it down with everyone. He would hang out with everyone. When I worked for him as his assistant in his basement, and I heard him on the phone talking to people, he was equally enthusiastic to talk to a United States senator or a primetime cable news host as he was the special representative of the local college Republican group. He simply loved people. He saw that Americans were getting targeted, in particular at the Tea Party at the time, with unfairness, with charges of racism, of bigotry. They're getting lied about by the establishment media over and over again. And he was the one who took the slings and arrows. He was the original person who stood up and stood in front of everyone and said, I will take the bullets so you guys don't have to, because I think it's kind of fun. I think pissing off the right people is fun. That's the lessons of Andrew Breitbart in a nutshell, and I'm really excited to talk about it with two people who were inspired by the man, Charlie Kirk and Nigel Farage. And my first question, I guess, goes to Charlie. Is it, Charlie, you're someone who's compelled to fight like Andrew. What drew you to that attitude?
Well, it was actually Breitbart.com that gave me the first opportunity to get in the fight. So I was a senior in high school, and I was flipping through my AP economics textbook. Has anyone used the Krugman economics textbook still? Does anyone still use that? Yeah. So on one of the pages, you'll see it. There's just a flat-out falsehood that it says the tax cuts put forth by Reagan did not accelerate economic growth. And it's just adverse to history and data. And so I kind of wrote up a response to this, and I started circulating it around, and a guy named Joel Pollack found it, who is in leadership at Breitbart.com, and he said, hey, Charlie, why don't you write this up? And I said, really? Okay. I was in high school at the time and wrote up the article, and Breitbart was the only website that took it seriously, and it went totally viral. It got rewritten all over the internet. I think it got drudged, actually, which was pretty cool. And then from there, I got on Fox News for the first time when I was in high school. And then it kind of fell into this whole idea that maybe there is something that can be started from nothing. And so Breitbart gave me that opportunity to get involved and get engaged in the culture war. Now, mind you, I never met Andrew Breitbart. I never had the opportunity to work with him. Actually, right when he tragically passed away is right when I got into the movement. It was almost within a 30-day time period. But I feel as if I know him just from reading all of his work and watching his videos. It's a guy that you can see is gregarious, larger than life, and a lot of his tactics of going straight into the liberal mob and confronting them is something I love to do, as many of you know, and allowing their extremism and their radicalism and their incoherence to be shown is something Andrew specialized in. And my favorite Andrew Breitbart video ever is when he went out to this liberal mob in Chicago, and he went up to them and said, what does your sign say? What does your sign say? They don't even know what their sign said. So that's a fun little, tool and tactic to use. But I'm compelled to fight like Andrew Breitbart in a different way, which is, I mean, I feel like we're losing our country to forces from within. And I want to do everything I possibly can to fight. What I love about what Breitbart does, the news site, is that you understand that you have to fight for every inch. They're not going to give the country back to you.
Yes, this was a huge lesson of Andrew, which is that the media will never like you if you're on the right. They will use you against more powerful figures on the right, but that's the only time they'll ever give you any accolades. So just understand that this is something I always warn young people, that you do have to enjoy taking the heat a little bit if you're going to be a part of this fight, because the media will never give you those accolades, and if they do so, it's only under false pretenses. Andrew was the first guy to point that out, and I think one thing Charlie keys in on is that we have a legacy of empowering citizen journalists, James O'Keefe being the most notable among them, but it's really been countless over the years. And Charlie was someone who, in high school, writing up content, we didn't want to, we wanted Charlie to be able to speak for himself, to be able to put things up under his own byline, and to let the people have a voice in the media and not have the media fully controlled by the establishment elite. That's the mission of Breitbart.com in a nutshell, and that's also the mission, in many ways, of UKIP and Nigel's cause, which is giving a voice to the voiceless.
Yeah, I mean, he really was an inspiring, visionary figure. And I think my playbook was very similar to his. Righteous indignation, but lots of jocularity. And I said to you all earlier, didn't I? Make it fun, smile, let's be real people. And that's exactly what Andrew Breitbart was. I think his His legacy is astonishing. A desperately untimely death, appalling for his family. But I tell you what, if he's looking down from up there, he'll be very, very proud of what he created. You know, before social media really came along, to form our opinions, we had to rely on the New York Times. I've got a better one than that for you. Or CNN. They're still awake. It's all okay. And here's the point, that with social media, completely different voices that weren't relying on effectively begging for crumbs from the table from mainstream media came along, and I think he started something. The biggest accolade that I can pay, Alex, to Andrew Breitbart is I said the day after, the 24th of June, 2016, I said Brexit could not have happened without Breitbart, and I can't pay a higher compliment to anybody on the planet than that.
And so the left hates Andrew Breitbart so much that they just cannot get rid of him. And so here's the amazing example of how Andrew Breitbart won the 2016 election 5 years later. And I told Alex this theory before, and he finds it funny. So for those of you that remember, he was the one, as you saw in the video shortly, that captured Anthony Weiner on Twitter, and he denied it and then went back and forth with, which led to his resignation, which then led to the schism between him and Huma Abedin, who is Hillary Clinton's very close friend. And that whole schism. So then that led to an FBI investigation into Anthony Weiner for underage illegal behavior. Let's just leave it at that. So this ongoing investigation was happening into Anthony Weiner, but there was also an FBI investigation going into the Clinton emails. And so if you remember, James Comey came out of nowhere about 8 days before the election, and he said, hold on a second, I did not fully satisfy my testimony. And the Democrats attribute James Comey's statement to the reason why they lost. I don't know. I think that's a little generous, but I think it probably played a role because it was the #1 news story about Hillary Clinton's emails. What they were really saying is that they were looking through Anthony Weiner's hard drive in that investigation that Andrew Breitbart triggered 6 years ago, which then led to them saying that it gave an incomplete testimony, which was a horrible political hit against Hillary Clinton. So Andrew Breitbart is still destroying the left 6 years later, even though he's not with us any longer. So.
Very good.
It's amazing, and the legacy of Andrew is going to be a generation of citizen journalists, a generation of people who not only do we not care if the CNNs and the New York Times of the world approve of us, we're genuinely not interested in what they have to say and what they think of us. And this is something that continues to confuse them. And you see the latest tactic which the left is using now, which is the complete anti-Breitbart tactic, which is blacklisting. They're trying to go after advertisers, get advertisers to stop advertising on conservative businesses. They're refusing to publish conservatives in mainstream publications, saying their voices are not valid. And we're seeing what's happening in the most ubiquitous left-wing bastion in the Western world, which is our campuses, where conservative speakers are no longer welcome, period. And if they are welcome, you have to get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of security to have them. This is the left doing the exact opposite of what Andrew Breitbart did. What Andrew Breitbart, he stood for, his motto was, more voices, not less. Now, grammatically, if you break that down, I don't know if that it is kind of redundant, and I think it should be more voices, not fewer. But the sentiment is key. The sentiment is that let's have an even playing field. Let's debate on an even battlefield of ideas, and we're confident we'll win. So bring us on a fair playing field. The left refuses to do that. They shut us down. They want us to get banned. They want to shut us, to shadow ban us from social media. And this is because they're afraid of you guys. They're afraid of the citizen journalists, of the young people getting the information from free sources of information and being able to beat them at their own arguments.
But isn't this the next big battle? I mean, you know, I met Mark Zuckerberg a few months ago, got the chance to question him, and he still insists that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. Now, if it is a platform for all ideas, Alex, we're going to win, because we've got better arguments than the other side have got.
Right.
You know, it's as simple as that.
Yes.
But the real worry here is, without social media, no Brexit. Without social media, no Trump. I mean, he is the tweeter-in-chief globally, isn't he? Without social media, no Italian coalition government who are doing such a magnificent job in standing up for Italian interests against Brussels. They really are wonderfully. But here's the problem. The great battle we face is, and we know it, we know what's going on through Google, we know what's going on through Facebook, we know what's going on through Twitter, and they have launched a war against us. And I'm somebody that believes in free markets. I'm somebody that hates big government. I'm somebody that wants to lift the weight of regulation off the shoulders of people. But we've got a situation here now where these firms have a virtual monopoly on this market. And my passionate hope and belief is that President Trump will run in 2020 on a ticket that says he's going to get a grip of these social media companies, make sure there is a Bill of Rights for social media users so that all arguments get a fair crack of the whip. Because if we don't get that, we've got a problem.
I have a question for Charlie. So Charlie, this is something that I was thinking about this week, and Breitbart.com, we're so grateful for all of you. Go to Breitbart and encourage you to check us out. We were the single most influential website on social media in the 2016 election, according to a Harvard study, just ahead of the New York Times. So we're very proud of that. But one thing we're concerned about, one thing that we're looking at what I was talking about, the insulation, the closing down of the mind and of speech in the country. So, and then we learned, Nigel and I talked about this earlier in the day, about how now they're advancing truly anti-science beliefs. In the UK, we're now being taught that 8-year-olds are being taught that boys can have periods too. So we're going in we're running far away from science and into this PC political correctness. Charlie, when is the time that we call on young people to start standing up to their teachers and start volunteering publicly and just saying, I don't believe that's true, I'm not going to accept that in the classroom, and stand up for yourselves?
I think a lot of that's already happening, and I mean, the stories of students in this room are endless, of even non-controversial examples of just trying to host campus events, and the administration tries to smear them. And Alex, I did this yesterday, and Nigel, I want you to see this. How many students here have been maligned, attacked, targeted, because of your conservative views? Grade lowered. I mean, everyone. And the media will never report this. And it is harder. It's harder than ever to be a young conservative on a college campus. These are islands of totalitarianism. They want everyone to look different but think the same. And the greatest weapon that everyone here has is the smartphone in your hands. And that's what Andrew Breitbart was beginning to touch on. And really, Andrew was, even before the explosion of social media we've seen, I mean, he was at the very beginning stages of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I mean, it's grown 1,000-fold since 2011, 2012. And so that's one of the big things we try to train and encourage our students is, film everything. And the power of moving image, the power of video can really expose some of the most entrenched, leftist biases. And there's a reason why the left does not want you to be able to film, because they have something to hide. They don't want their ideas to be made publicly, and that's why they try everything they possibly can to go after people like Nigel and Breitbart, because they're so concerned that other ideas can threaten them. They don't want to have a discussion or public discourse. And look what happened at Politicon with you, Alex. I mean, when you start to have a discussion with, I think it was April Ryan, wasn't it?
April Ryan, yes.
She's a real gem. Where you actually cross-examine her. She almost, I think she stood up or did something insane.
Yeah.
That's a great example of it.
This is a hilarious story, and I noticed this YouTube never came out because I don't think it made her look very good. She said that we would smear her on our website, but we have a parlor trick that we use. We try to quote left-wingers verbatim and just let people decide for themselves whether or not they think it's insane. And most of the time people do. So it is a great fodder for us, which is why Steve Cohen, if anyone watched the Google hearing, the Democrat congressman was very upset because all of his news coverage is Breitbart, because we just quote him, and he was very unhappy that we're at the top of his search engine results. He's very unhappy about that because we point out all the insane things he says. So April Ryan got in my face with she accused me of smearing her, and I said, name one headline. Give me one false headline about us. And she couldn't name one, obviously, because we don't smear people. We quote them verbatim. That's the parlor trick. That's what we're trying to do. And someone about 20 minutes later hands her a phone with a headline on it, and she goes over, picks up the phone from the front row of the audience, comes up to me, I'm sitting in a chair on the panel, puts the phone in my face, reads the headline. I forgot what it was. I think it was it was something about how Trump caused her death threats, and she says, oh yeah, I agree with that. That was a good point. Proving my whole point, which is that we just quote her verbatim, and she got in my face to point that out, and she had to rise from her chair and get completely triggered. And this is the thing that Andrew Breitbart really has triggered a lifetime of snowflakes. I really think, if anything, that could be his legacy, among anything else.
He was the street fighter before anyone else in the modern digital era, and he went into the most just hostile liberal environments and was unafraid to have those kind of conversations and discussions.
And isn't the moral of it all that Breitbart stood up and fought for what he believed in? I've stood up and fought for what I believed in. You've stood up and fought for what you believed in. Alex, you've stood up and fought for what you believed in. And the really important message to the young delegates in this hall is you can come along to events like this, you can listen to speakers, you can learn things, you can agree with things. But if you go back home and do nothing about it, we don't advance the cause. If you want to change the world for the better, then join us, stand up, and fight for it at every given opportunity.
All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You bet.
Thank you. Brilliant. Terrific. Pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Good stuff.
Beautiful. Yep. Here we go. Good job.